Hey there, everyone. Thank you for joining today for our presentation on DevOps 101 for Salesforce admins. My name is Joe Marshall, a marketing manager here at Prodly. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a minute. I want to give a little time for more people to be able to join. But while we get started, I would love to know sort of who's joining us today, sort of what role you occupy inside of Salesforce. So we do have a poll that we'd love for you to answer. It's going to help us be able to tune the content a little bit better to our audience. So if you could answer exactly what is your role inside of Salesforce, that'd be really helpful for us. And we'll have this up for about a minute or two while we let people join. Just to reiterate for the new participants who have joined, we're going to give it another minute before we go ahead and get started, but we're just trying to see who our audience is today. So if you could answer the poll we have up, that help us tune the content we have. All right, thank you for answering the poll. Let's take a look. It looks like we have about 77% Salesforce admins, which makes sense for a webinar for Salesforce admins. So we can go ahead and get started. Just some quick housekeeping notes. You are going to be muted, the attendees, but you can ask your questions in the question box, and we will try to answer them both throughout the webinar as well as at the end. We have a designated time, and we will be recording this webinar, and you will receive a copy tomorrow on Wednesday, the 13th. So without further ado, we can go ahead and get started. I'm going to introduce our first speaker today, Jay Manning, who is the Director of Sales Engineering at Prodly. Jay, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe, and thanks for everyone for being here and joining us today. A little bit of background about myself. You see my name there, Jeremiah. I go by Jay. I've got about 13 years kind of in the Salesforce ecosystem and about 17 working with CRM, going all the way back to an ACT database. And then this is the time where you were backing data up on zip and Jazz drives, but going to a goldmine database at some point, migrating that over to Salesforce Professional Edition, and this is before products were actually included. It was a paid add-on back then. Spent the last 10 years working at Conga as employee number 9, really starting as a business analyst there, going into the dev space where I owned Conga Composer. I was an SE focused on SIs and ISVs, and finally wrapping up in the technical enablement group, focusing on kind of technical excellence over there. And then lastly here, I joined Prodly about 4 months ago, like it says there, as the Director of Sales Engineering. And love to introduce Christine Marshall. She'll be my other panelist today. So please, Christine, introduce yourself a little bit if you would.
Thank you, Jay. It's so funny that you mentioned Goldmine because that's exactly how I got started in Salesforce as well, migrating from Goldmine to Salesforce back in 2014. So I've been in the ecosystem for quite a while now. Normally as a solo admin, I'm a typical accidental admin, entirely self-taught. But I'm Christine Marshall, I'm a Salesforce MVP, and I currently work as an evangelist at Salesforce Ben, so writing about all things Salesforce. And in my spare time, I do some Salesforce mentorship, and I run my local Salesforce admin user group as well.
Awesome. I think we're going to kick over into one more little poll here as the attendees are continuing to roll in. Thank you again for joining us here. So let's go ahead and take a look here at kind of the theme of today's session. We'll open it up for another poll. And really, again, to the heart of the session today, appreciate all the answers coming in. We've got about half the people voted already, so thank you for that as well. And it's actually kind of as expected. I'm watching the numbers tick up here. We'll talk a little bit about the results here when we close the poll down, but kind of what we expected here, and really the reason why we wanted to bring some of this information out to the audience here. Awesome. We'll take a look here at the results. Over half, just over half there are aware but don't utilize it, and that's kind of the expectation right now. And we'll talk about why we feel that's the way it is right now. Just starting to utilize it, yeah, it's really starting to get into this ecosystem in the admin space. From our poll results earlier, the majority of us are admins here. And then never heard of it, that's good as well. We'll get into some of the kind of foundational pieces regarding that information. So let's actually jump a little bit right in and start to take a look at this. So what is DevOps? Again, some of those foundational pieces. It's really a combination of philosophies and practices, tools, systems, people, ultimately, with the goal of shortening that life cycle, the development life cycle, providing continuous delivery, most importantly with high quality, reducing errors and unintended consequences. It's a whole methodology to bring things quicker to market and reducing the errors that are in there. Another big piece of this will be collaboration and visibility. We'll talk a lot about that today as well. Think about a multi-admin environment or multi-admin, multi-dev environment where the effects of overridden change sets or refreshed sandboxes, a lot of potential kind of toe stomping is the term I use for that one there. But what about DevOps for Salesforce? So same idea, those people, those philosophies, those practices, specifically for Salesforce here. Salesforce has been clicks not code. That's really the Salesforce term. We love that term here. DevOps hasn't really caught up to that. So specifically DevOps for Salesforce, all those things here for Salesforce. But what about for Salesforce admins? Same idea, just reiterating that point here. A bit of maybe a misnomer, DevOps, the word dev in there. Historically, it's been the dev community that is the target of the ops solutions. Salesforce is a prime example of a system where non-traditional devs, think admins, business users, product owners, consistently add value to the lifecycle, the development lifecycle process. It's really a spot where DevOps hasn't really caught up to the ecosystem itself. So what are the point of Salesforce DevOps here? Same idea. We're looking at time saved from faster, more reliable deployments, increased release cadence from automation. So talk about continuous improvement, continuous development situations, fewer bugs, fewer errors shipped. That's always a good thing. Better testing, increased collaboration. Again, here's that collaboration piece between your developers and your admins. This one's key. What is one side doing that can affect the other side? They're in tandem, they're working together. Unfortunately, sometimes they're working separately, but always with the same end goal. A DevOps system can really bring those two sides together. And then a clear division of labor in that areas, that reduced toe crushing there. It's guidelines, roles, responsibilities. You can provide project or user-based environments for developments. You can split up labor appropriately, but ultimately bringing everything back together with good visibility and collaboration. So the release management cycle, again, some more foundational things here. This is a traditional release management cycle, specifically kind of in the Salesforce realm. And someone has to request a change. Someone's got to plan and prioritize those changes. You're going to build it, you're going to review, you got to test those changes, ultimately deploy, support, and any issues you may have seen that were unforeseen or may have popped up at final deployment, reporting, issue collection, and fixes ultimately, just continuing that cycle. So where do DevOps systems really fit in? How can we help the audience there when we're talking about the Salesforce release management cycle? Well, the first spot we're going to look as we go around the circle here is the review. In answering the simple question of what changed can be time consuming. Think of using a change set, the standard admin-based CD change management tool in Salesforce there, it doesn't help us know what is different or what has changed. It really just provides for us a mechanism selecting to deploy those changes. That's a first step, reviewing, okay, what has actually changed, reviewing those differences in there. Third-party, other DevOps tools can actually help us review what has changed, not just a mechanism to move something. Moving on to kind of the next one here, test. We got to test those changes. What are the unintended or intended consequences here? Where can we find areas to reduce time? How can we automate testing here? DevOps comes into play and helps us develop sophisticated testing processes, whether it be user-based, where they're helping the user, where do they click in a system, or what's the expected result when a user clicks here, or what happens when I change, think CPQ, should be pretty familiar with the audience here. What happens if I change a price rule, or add a new price condition, or change a bundle? How do we test those changes and make sure we're releasing our intended changes without introducing unexpected, or something in the dev community known as regressions? So regression testing, the ability to identify bugs that are about to be deployed to production, at least telling you something is wrong, helping you identify that something is out of order. And then continuing on here in the next one, the next good spot where this helps is really the deployment side. When making deployments, I've talked about change sets here. I'll talk about data deployments as well, and data loader being the Salesforce mechanism for that. But when making deployments using time-consuming methods like data loader, like sometimes a change set, they can really slow down this deployment step in the management cycle. And any slowdown anywhere just increases the time it takes to get something to market, the market sometimes being our internal users of Salesforce. This is a perfect example of where DevOps can improve the Salesforce release management cycle. How do we speed up our deployments to where we can review what has changed, test those changes, and then bring those changes to market, typically our production instance, quicker and more efficiently? A little bit deeper here, this is even more into the traditional Agile kind of release structure here. What can admins do? What do they gain from leveraging something in DevOps? If we take a look at this traditional Agile management process here, Agile release management operates off sprints. You work on making changes over a period of time. 2 weeks is pretty typical. And you're going to deploy those changes to production at that previously scheduled time. Thursday, every 2 weeks on a Thursday night, or something that usually minimizes the impact on your end users. But what happens if an admin needs to make a change the day after a release or during a release? It's pretty typical. Business users are always pinging their admins with little changes they want them to make. I do it to mine. Amy, if you're out there, I apologize up front for that. And I apologize right now for hitting you with changes and requests way out of cycle right here. But in a traditional Agile management structure, are you forced to wait for the next release? Are you going to go out of cycle and do this? An admin with the knowledge of a DevOps and access to the right tool, they can really make the changes they need to when they need. You don't have to wait for that big push every 2 weeks. You can still have your compliance and your processes and your methodologies in place while leveraging the right DevOps solution. It's really just one way an admin can utilize DevOps to do those out of sprint releases here, still maintaining that governance, still maintaining that compliance moving through. So the benefits here, why would somebody actually want to do this? I'm a big why person. My philosophy is you can't explain the why of something. It's really not worth the time to even take a look at here. So the 3 big pillars of DevOps for admins, velocity. That one's pretty self-explanatory. It makes it easier and faster to complete changes and start working on the next change sooner. We all have a backlog of projects we're working on, we being the admin community here, developers as well. Everybody on this call, they have a backlog of projects and changes they want to push out. So when you speed up those changes, deploy them quicker, you can start working on the next one sooner, hopefully reducing that backlog. You can push data between orgs. So increased velocity, if you're working in a lower environment and you actually want to go and do some work in one of those dev or dev pro boxes, maybe getting some data in there to actually work against and test against. Think CPQ, advanced approvals, field service lightning. These are specific apps in Salesforce that are configuration heavy, That means the configuration of those applications is actually based upon, a lot of times, majority of them actually, are records in Salesforce, not metadata, not classes, not custom settings in here. Salesforce moves to that clicks not code, including its third-party applications. How do we promote? How do we change? How do we move that data? How do we work with data that actually is record data, not metadata, which is actually typically easier to move with DevOps or change sets? So those configuration record-based applications here. That middle pillar, collaboration. We talked about visibility and collaboration a few times already, but the ability to actually have visibility and engage with whole business units, the change, the visibility, break down those silos. If you've got a central location where your changes are happening, that can be metadata and data, records and typical code, developer type stuff. If you've got one spot, one visibility, one window to pane, one pane to look through, you can break down those silos and make sure everyone's working on projects and avoiding that toe crushing going on. This isn't specific to admins and devs either. Think about the increased visibility you can give to your parties that are involved in the change process. Those are users that are requesting changes. Those are business owners that want to make sure those changes are working for their team. Sales ops, if you're pushing a price rule from CPQ, the sales ops team, the deal desk team is going to need to know that happens and have visibility into when that happens so they can see those expected changes during the quote process or opportunity process. And that goes right into the next one here, risk and rework and reducing those two subjects. When you move away from a big bang release to shipping smaller changes, you inherently reduce risk. You can be better about testing smaller changes and not a huge package of changes. You can have dev environments spun up quickly with the data to do those smaller projects where everyone can work in their own spot. You can mask sensitive data. You don't need to push the exact data into a box to do a project. You just need some data. You don't need the contact names. You don't need banking information if you're working in a financial or an ERP system. You don't need that sensitive data. You just need good, real data in there. Brings me into that sandbox seeding use case here, where you refresh a sandbox, great, it's got no data unless you're using a partial or a full. Those partial and full sandboxes, they've got a line item on your annual spend with Salesforce. Let's leverage those more free. Nothing's free, but the ones that don't have a line item are those dev, sometimes those dev pro sandboxes, where you can leverage those lower environments like it was a full or a partial sandbox. There's no data in those. What if you can seed those sandboxes automatically with data after you spin them up? You can do them by project, by user, by anything, and then the data is in those orgs in a matter of minutes. Another real world example here of using a system, a DevOps system, is if you're seeding a sandbox or spinning up a partial or a full sandbox, what if you've got an object with just too much data? The task object is a perfect example of this. Polymorphic object used across almost every single other object in the system. It has a lot of data. We've got some customers that can't include that in their sandbox template, where they spin up a partial and then they use a system like ours, Prodly, I work for Prodly obviously, to actually go and push X number of those task records in there, and then we'll reestablish those relationships for you. Again, leveraging another box, reducing your to market time because your sandbox spin-ups take less time as well. Why hasn't there been a better adoption of this? So we talked about that first poll here. They're using it, starting to use it. They're familiar with it, but not using it yet. Some of the reasons why maybe this has not been adopted yet, they're time consuming. A lot of the solutions out there are code heavy. That's the unintended audience for Salesforce admins that are doing this work already. You're already in the DevOps space. You just haven't been included well enough with solutions built tailored for you. The word dev comes into focus all the time. These are DevOps solutions, code heavy, again, time intensive. Some other general things in here, lack of governance. And I've been a Salesforce admin. I was an accidental admin as well when I started. Christine talked about that. You just don't have somebody watching over your shoulder telling you the best way to do things. We've kind of had free reign here. Somebody asks us to make a change. We sometimes go and do that in production. Maybe not the best route, but the easiest way to market would be to go and make a quick change in production. Strategic shortcomings, antiquated processes. We've always done it this way. This is the way it works. We just didn't know. And I'm not blaming anybody for that. That's totally true. We didn't know we had good solutions where we could leverage a DevOps tool to do this work. I've been around a long time, change sets and data loader. If you think about when they first came out, we're going back to when the iPhone 1 or Blu-ray or Netflix original streaming services came out here. Every one of those has been improved. Change sets have been about the same. Data loader's been the same. I'm a fan of it ain't broke, don't fix it, but 15 years is a long time to go without significant improvements. Still, to this day, moving those configuration, those record-based configuration applications, it's not an ability to do that right now. For that, we've got data loader, and that points right to that first bullet point, right on top right here. It's been about 15 minutes up here talking through. Enough for me. Let's talk to somebody with a lot more experience in the trenches than I have here. And really the part I'm looking most forward to is kind of bringing Christine in here, having a little bit of a fireside chat. And Christine, thanks for giving me a little bit of time up there, but I'm looking forward to chatting with you for a while here.
You're welcome. I'm really looking forward to this because I think I'm the perfect admin to talk with you about this, because this is such an emerging topic. And as an accidental solo admin, my thought is, I don't get it. What's it got to do with me? That has been my overriding feeling for the past couple of years. This is for developers, not me.
And that's the primary thing we're hearing as well, that even DevOps are scary sometimes too, because they're built for devs, right? So, what's your first impressions of DevOps? You're starting to take a look at these, you were as an admin side. So what really is that first impression, other than I don't get it and what's it got to do with me? But what other impressions do you have along this space?
That it's so heavily aimed towards developers. We talk about Agile and sprints and regression testing, and while these terms that come up, to an admin that maybe doesn't work in a team or that doesn't work with developers, these concepts just seem really unfamiliar and not particularly relevant. It's not the way we've done things. Admins don't work like this. Isn't the whole point of declarative development that we don't have to do this? But times are changing. So that's been my opinion as I've seen all this new information come out, is that it's very interesting. And it still doesn't feel entirely relevant to admins. It's not clear where we fit in.
Right, now that's fair, and kind of leads me to the next question. And we talked a little bit this up front with everybody. We had chatted a few times prior to this webinar here, and we feel that admins have been doing this all along, right? It's not that they haven't been doing this, it's that they haven't been involved. So why do you think that the Salesforce admin needs a more declared, not to use that declarative, but a more declared and more functional DevOps tool here? Why is there a shift, and where are the advantages, and why would a Salesforce admin need to do this?
Well, I think we have to appreciate that Salesforce is becoming ever more mature, ever more powerful. We are using tools as administrators, things like Flow, which are actually really code in the background. And as we know, code needs to be tested. Code is not built in production, it's built in sandboxes and it's migrated. So we have to become very aware that we are starting to handle some really amazing functionality, really powerful tools, and that comes with more responsibility. We need more governance, we need more collaboration with developers, we need more understanding about integrations. As Salesforce and your Salesforce org gets bigger, we have to keep an eye on what we're doing. There's more complexity, there's more technical debt to manage. All of this means starting to look at governance, starting to look at steering committees, starting to look at DevOps, and ensuring that we're not quite as blasé as perhaps we were in the past. We can't build in production. We have to start doing things properly, and we could really learn a lot from DevOps and from some of the things that developers have been doing for a long time, as you say, working in sprints, rolling out smaller changes. As an admin, when I get a project, when I get a requirement, I build the whole thing and I push it out, all of it, apps, page layouts, reports, all the automation, it all goes out at once. And that's become really a mindset for me, as you launch it once, you build it, you launch it, off you go. So the concept of Agile and working in sprints is quite new to me, and I think to a lot of other admins.
And that's fair. And some of that is on us. I point to myself here, the business users that were joining us today, that are joining us today. A lot of that's on us. The expectation in the Salesforce ecosystem is when I go and ask my admin a question, that the response time is going to be immediate and I should expect that to be rolled out within a day. That's unfair.
Yeah.
That's an expectation we're putting on our admins. And again, I apologize to mine, Amy, if you're out there, and all of those that I've done that before. It's a change in mindset. And I think that's a big part of the whole DevOps equation for admins, is change the way we're doing things here. And that's a change to our philosophies and our behaviors. And that's often the most difficult thing. The tools exist. How do we change our behaviors to leverage them? It's kind of the main takeaway there.
Yeah.
Speaking about tools that are, oh, sorry, to cut you off there.
No, I was just saying absolutely. And I think, for admins out there, a lot of admins are not from a technical background. They probably don't have an IT degree. I think it's far more common for developers to have more technical background. And so it's not that they've been doing anything wrong and they've been using Salesforce in the way that it's been intended. It's just that times are changing and there are tools out there to support them that they're probably not aware of. So it's really good to keep up with what DevOps is and what benefits it can bring to admins, and not just seeing it as a developer tool. Right,
and I'm going to kind of go off topic here just for like 1 second. And for our admins out there and our developers out there as well, our business users too, there's a chance that some of these solutions are already being used in your organization. Sometimes we just need to go and ask our counterparts, hey, how are you doing this? What are you leveraging now? Can we be a part of that? How can we leverage that as well? Because sometimes those silos exist, just the old mindset that the DevOps tools are for dev, but some of those tools are already used in these organizations. Sometimes just going and asking your colleagues there allows you to kind of break those silos down and start to use them. And that leads me right to the next question here. When you're going about making changes in your day-to-day, what's your main route to do that right now, Christine?
So I use sandboxes and I use change sets, and I'll be honest, I've always struggled with change sets. Putting dependencies in, there are times that I have managed to overwrite things in production by adding the wrong dependencies in. I think they're quite easy to go wrong, but I do try to use my sandboxes. You've picked up on some really interesting points so far. Putting data in sandboxes. I tend to work on developer sandboxes, and as you say, they have no data, and that always makes me want to go running back to production, so I know I've got real data to test with. But I end up manually creating it. If I'm being really honest, I'm in a developer sandbox, building my automations, making my changes, and manually creating data, which just adds so much extra time and extra work.
Yep. And that's where, you can reduce the time it takes to make projects happen. You can do more projects. Circling back to that same point there, that efficiencies. So what about any kind of personally utilized DevOps tools or strategies? You talked about change sets, how you go about your day-to-day, but about any specific DevOps tools or strategies?
So I don't use any specific DevOps tools in my current role, but I think what's been really interesting in learning more about DevOps is that myself and other admins, we are already doing a lot of things that DevOps encompasses. We're building, we're testing, we're migrating, because it's not just change sets, it's data loader and it's data wizard. We are moving data, we are moving changes into production. So we are doing these things. It's just that we're doing them in a very piecemeal manner. We're doing them in a way that's taking longer and where there's more room for error. So this is what's been really interesting in learning more about the DevOps world, and the tools available are how they can simplify what we're doing. And I think this is why this webinar is just so useful, so that other admins understand that they're not just tools for developers, and what the benefits are, what the use cases are. I know as an admin, sometimes it can just be really hard to understand the relevance and how it's going to improve my job, and everything is sales, right? It's what's in it for me, not just what's in it for my business, what's in it for my users, what's in it for me as an admin. That's what I want to know.
And the irony is there's a lot in it for an admin, but the solutions that often exist out there, there's not a lot in it because they're hard to use. They just are. So it kind of leads me to the last question I've got for this subject here is, knowing that you're doing some of this already, you've been doing DevOps-like work, and the solutions that you're utilizing to do it now, knowing that there's other ones out there that may be better, what is the biggest barrier of entry for admins right now to actually get into a DevOps framework?
So I honestly feel that most tools are aimed at developers, and that's no criticism of them, because traditionally that's who they've been used by, but they are very code heavy. And in order for admins to really get on the DevOps bandwagon, we need tools that they can use. And that means it can't be code focused. It has to be clicks not code and declarative. It has to be something that admins can actually use. I need to click buttons. I can't code. I'm not a developer. So if I'm really going to start, using DevOps, making the most of the benefits, then I need a tool that's going to support me. So it has to be a tool that's admin friendly. And I think that's what's been a real struggle, is finding tools out there with an interface that an admin can use, right. And to understand, how they can move to a DevOps tool. Again, it's not that admins haven't been doing a lot of things. We've just been using different things and different tools. If developers are using Jira or something, for their tickets, I'm using case Salesforce. It's not that I'm not doing my work and creating tickets essentially for the work that I'm doing, but I'm doing it elsewhere, and I'm not using such a sophisticated tool or a tool that allows me to do DevOps. And that's because for a long time, I don't think there's been any that you could, really sell that admins could use, that they would be easy enough for admins to join in.
Right. And another thing is Salesforce admins spend their time in Salesforce. A lot of Salesforce developers don't. So there hasn't been traditionally a tool that has that Salesforce admin first approach, which actually is in Salesforce. I think that's a big part of it as well, from my perspective. But
absolutely, and it does come back again to an appreciation of a lot of admins out there are from just a different background, and that's for my background is sales support management, data analytics, project management, and these are all skills that are great for a Salesforce admin. But my background is not in code, it's not in DevOps. It's, I just don't have that background that would enable me to use a lot of the tools that are out there on the market. So it's not a criticism of admins in any way. It's actually that just as Salesforce has almost done a, no code, low code first, and has built a platform that can be developed by admins for all of those benefits, because it is faster, because it takes, pressure off developers, because it reduces cost. We need DevOps tools that can do exactly the same.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I appreciate the insight. It's been a pleasure chatting with you today and previously to this, and I hope it's obviously not the last time we can talk about things just in general as well. Again, thank you for your perspective. It is unique. It's probably better than mine to the audience that's here, and I really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on.
All right, I'm gonna continue on now to talk a little bit more about specific options for admins. Now, we talked about what it is, why it matters to the community as a whole. Let's actually go in and take a look at some of the options that exist out there. How do admins leverage this idea? So some specific pieces that come here, we've got Salesforce, right? That's the middle ground. That's where we all live. The joke previously at Congo was we live on planet Salesforce. Absolutely true. So what does that give you in terms of moving data? Well, Salesforce gives you the data loader. That's essentially an exercise in Microsoft Excel. If you download the version of data loader for your desktop, I had to go and get a Java runtime environment and a lot of machines and compliance and anti kind of virus things that you may have to install for your organization. May not even want you to have to install a version of Java anymore. That's what's there. Effective? Sure, it does the job. Can be improved upon for sure. And then we've got change sets. So moving data loader, metadata with change sets. Been around a long time. I talked a little bit about this before. Now we're getting kind of the more code ones. These come directly from a Salesforce piece of documentation here, the change methodology pieces. Visual Studio Code, absolutely, typically more in the developer realm. Then you have third-party applications. Obviously, everyone knows here, I work for Prodly as the Director of Solution Engineering. So enter a solution that is admin-focused in the DevOps realm here. And this is what we're going to get to as we get into a little bit of a demo of how Prodly solves those challenges for the admins in the DevOps space. But before we get there, let's do one more poll here to make sure everyone's still with us, and just to get a little bit of a level set on which of these tools gives you the biggest headache, knowing that most of the people on this call have used at least one of these. So change sets, data loader, third-party tools, Visual Studio is on there. So again, sticking with some of those that Salesforce has posted as well. We've got actually a pretty decent split between change sets kind of at the top as the results are rolling in here, and then data loader and Visual Studio. So we've got some dev responses coming in, and then some what are typically admin responses as well, with knowing the data loaders actually kind of bridges the gap between the two. So here's those results. 43%, and again, I asked the question, which of these gives you the biggest headache? Now, there's a good chance that all of these give you a headache here, but you can see about 2/5, 40% change sets, and then the remainder are pretty much Visual Studio data loader, where again, data loader spans that gap typically between developers and admins there. Appreciate the answers as well. Let's jump right back in and take a look at how, again, Prodly solves some of these situations. We've got right here kind of next gen DevOps for Salesforce. That's important, right? This is a Salesforce first, really a data first solution, because data is so important for what we do. It's also got metadata abilities that are going to help alleviate some of those change set headaches as well. Scalability and flexibility in the architecture. This is how Prodly works. You've got the package installed in an org, pretty typical. What is atypical is you don't need this package installed in every single org. You just need to tell us where your source and destination is for your metadata and data. Source org, where it's coming from, destination orgs, where it's going to, up to 5 simultaneously, with a control org that houses essentially your templates, your mappings, your metadata, and your data, what you actually want to move in here. The configuration updates really benefit of this. We're talking about hours versus minutes. How quickly can you get stuff out? Quarterly, bi-weekly, to weekly, to daily, whatever you want to do. And you're reducing those errors, automated processes to reduce human error when you're doing data load things. Did I remember all of my dependencies? Did I pick up something I didn't mean to in a change set? Those are the things that we help solve, the answers we help with. Now, it's important here, if we had the safe harbor slide, I would put it right here. Everyone's favorite slide in the Salesforce ecosystem is a safe harbor slide. This is the vision for Prodly's AppOps and next-gen DevOps right here, where we've got testing, regression-based, painless testing here. We're doing release management for data and metadata. We're able to analyze those changes and then build upon them and democratize and split up some of that division of labor as we're building some of those things out. Again, a product vision, one important safe harbor here. This is the overall vision of Prodly for next-gen DevOps. Kind of the most important part, really what I was looking forward to getting to here is, what does this actually look like? What is Prodly? How do we solve some of these challenges in here? And for that, I actually need to go ahead and share a different screen real quick here. I want to share a different screen. Let me make sure I'm on the right tab. Flip over onto this one. Always dangerous to do here, but we're now looking at a Salesforce org standard dashboard. Again, this is an admin first solution we're looking at here, where I'm in the Prodly AppOps solution. I'm in our application right now. And I'm actually going to do something a little bit out of order. I'm going to kick off a deployment to seed a sandbox. We talk about being able to use a sandbox at a lower environment. This tab here, I actually have my, as it spins up and reloads the page here, my Salesforce Ben, my SF Ben sandbox right now, empty, a new dev box I spun up yesterday. Let's get some data in here as we work with something else, and I'll show you how long this takes, so I can actually do some work in this one. This is the Sandbox Seeding, how to leverage those lower environments for our project. I'm gonna come off here to our management board. I'm gonna go through a few things kind of out of order here. I'm gonna go to guided deployment. This is the, where do we wanna move data? We've got good data in production. I wanna put data in my SF Ben webinar org. We've got some metadata capabilities as well. I'll show you that in just a second. We can actually deactivate all those events, those validation rules, those workflow rules, those triggers, those custom triggers that may be there that might affect or might fire off when we make a bunch of data in an org. We're going to use an existing data set, and I'm going to go ahead and seed this with my Sales Cloud data right here. That's cases, actually that's accounts, contacts, opportunities, line items, opportunity contact roles for reference there. To do that by hand or to do that with data loader would be at least a half a day if you're really, really good at Excel. Here, I'm going to go ahead and push that data for governance. Let's have a good name. We can track when this data happened, a DevOps piece of functionality here. So let's seed SF Ben with Sales Cloud from prod, and some notes if we wanted that as well. And we're going to hit the deploy button. A lot's going to happen here. We'll come back to this a little bit later and review some of these results. I just wanted to kick this off so it finishes by the time we've got time to look at the results and talk about through them at the end of the webinar here. I talked about metadata. Well, we've got metadata in here, the ability to actually do some change set functionality, but instead of remembering all of the changes that happened, what did I change? What goes in this change set right now? What do I have to bring over? What might be some of those dependencies here? We give you the ability to load the differences between the org. So in this case, I'm actually looking at staging versus my production. You would typically promote some of these changes up to your pre-prod or staging environment. This is a partial sandbox right here. Or I've actually added a new, you can see it right here, new important account checkbox. Maybe I've changed some page layouts. I've added a new permission set. So some of those declarative metadata types, we're gonna actually include that information in a deployment right here. We can do not only this, but we can also do some data. Speaking of data, I'm gonna do both of these actually at one time. An account field, a new permission set in here I wanna bring over. So think of that as the change set, but also some data as well. Let's go ahead and turn off these events. And let's look for something specific. We've got some price rules in here. I did a new price rule in my staging environment. So I've got in my staging environment right here, I just built a new SFN webinar price rule, and I included with that a price action where I'm going to do some sort of discounting based upon some lookup query variable in here, a CPQ use case. But anytime you want to promote a change, think Conga Composer, you do your work in a sandbox, any CLM application, advanced approvals, field service lightning, or any other project that includes data as part of the configuration, we can promote that data as well. We are not unidirectional. You can go up or down with any of these changes, metadata and data. So in my staging environment, I want to push this new price rule up because I've released it here, I've tested it here, I've done all my work where I should, not in production, and let's push this configuration up as well. So I've got the metadata pieces. I'm going to push my price rules with all of its children or any parent dependencies automatically. So this is my new SF Ben price rule to prod from staging. A little governance again here, and we can deploy that as well. These work in parallel. So I'm working in multiple orgs. You can see my previous one right here where I'm seeding that sandbox. It's working in the background. We'll get back and look at some results in a few, but let's talk about some of the magic here, some of the things that are happening. These are data sets. These are templates that are going on right now. These data sets actually exist in my org as pre-configured, whatever you want to call them. I think a template is the best word here. And we would go take a look at that Sales Cloud one. There's a lot going on in here. Again, B2B, billing, field service lightning, advanced approval, CPQ. These are pre-built, ready to go with Prodly. When we take a look here at the one I'm actually pushing down to a sandbox, we can take a look at really the bread and butter of Prodly's release product here. This is going to load. This is going to be our data set editor. I'm going to jump right over to the diagram view. Think of this as our version of the Salesforce schema. It looks sometimes as busy as a schema builder can look as well, but this is the data we're looking at to move Sales Cloud data. So the account is the root object. Any parent accounts, we're going to bring that in. This is the magic. This is kind of the secret sauce of Prodly. We allow you to define all of this, and then we put it back in order and we reassociate everything back together. If you look at each of these little oval squares right now, these rectangles, each of these would be at least one data load if you're going to make this data, or as Christine was talking about it before, you're building this data by hand in a sandbox so you have good representative test data to build something against. Huge benefit here, spin up, refresh the sandbox, push the data you're looking for. That data really is whatever data you want it to be. It doesn't have to be all of it. If you only need 100 accounts and all of its children, just tell us that. We'll put in 100 of those records. If you need to mask sensitive data, so there's a billing email field on here, kind of part of CPQ, my implementation. I've got this little icon over here. I'm going to mask some of this data to automatically obfuscate, change, add data to the end. I don't want to email everybody out of my sandbox, my dev sandbox. I don't want to email or even take the chance to email them. So go ahead and put the .invalid at the end of those email addresses, just to guarantee you're not going to inadvertently email everybody out of a development box, out of a sandbox. If you want to randomize data, you can do that as well. If you want to set any empty or null out data, you can do all of that stuff right here in our template. That way you click a button and you deploy that data going out. So a little bit of kind of what's going on here, how we're defining what data looks like, how you choose which data you want to push in there. And that's really up to you. But let's go take a look now at, first of all, the one we pushed up into production. You can see the metadata part's done. We're completed on that side. Let's take a look at those results. So I had a new field, a new permission set that I pushed up. Here's how we're doing auditing with Prodly. DevOps, how do you track changes? How do you have compliance and governance here? So we're still working through, it looks like one more piece here, those price conditions, where we've done an update and an insert. If we recognize records that already exist there, we'll prevent those. We'll update those instead of inserting them. You could skip updating as well, but we're gonna prevent duplications in that destination org in the case where there's data already there. We're gonna insert that new price rule. We're gonna insert that new price action that was related to it. The metadata results, we push that field and that permission set in here, and this will finalize, it'll wrap up. We'll get our final results at the end. We're gonna actually take a look at that record we just put in there. So let's go take a look at that result here. That price rule, we can dig all the way down to the individual records for tracking. So no errors as expected. We did an insert. Here's the record that was in the source. That's the price rule you saw in my staging environment. Let's take a look at that new record now and its associated pieces in the destination, which is production. Click on that. Here's my in production SF Ben webinar price rule with its related price action as it came out of that staging environment. Doing that work for you. You don't have to worry about getting the right one, associating there. Any weird dependencies you might have forgot of on the data side, all of those pieces show up when we do that work using Prodly to deploy it. The next question is, okay, what happens when I deploy that? What if I made an unintended consequence or a change to my org here? Regression testing. It's a big term in DevOps, but it's really simplifying how do we test and make sure something didn't get inadvertently changed that I don't expect to happen. Maybe I sent that rule up and I forgot it was active in staging and I'm not ready to activate it yet. That's where AppOps test comes in, where you're gonna tell us what to test. Well, I'm gonna test my CPQ quote line items for these specific fields right here, the discount fields, the net amount fields, all of those key data points that matter to me that I wanna make sure are correct, so I'm not quoting the wrong way when I'm going out and doing deals on my side. The test case, okay, what record has the good data in there? How do we build a baseline? What expected values are there? Templates, what are we checking? Test cases, what are the values we expect? And let's go and actually see if this is doing what it should. I'm gonna do a new test run. I'm gonna make sure my new business quotes are happening the way they should after I pushed a change in here. And I'm gonna run that immediately. AppOps test is gonna access the Salesforce CPQ API. And we're gonna return and see that it looks like we're getting the results we expect right now. No inadvertent changes from our price rule change. Any errors we might have seen right here would have come back with the fields that are wrong, the differences in there. This gives you an idea that we just pushed a regression, an unintended change to an environment when it relates to Salesforce CPQ. This is a great way to put that smoke alarm, that gut check test in there. And we have a lot of people, a lot of customers that are running this on a schedule. Every weekday, every day if they want to, Monday through Friday, they're coming in, 7 o'clock, they're being emailed those results. They know that Salesforce CPQ is acting the way it should. A smoke alarm, automated regression testing tool for Salesforce CPQ and contracting. Great way to amend and add to your regression testing. Maybe bring regression testing into the admin world a little bit here. So I jumped over, I talked about the kind of promoting, I looked at CPQ here. Let's go take a look again at our seeding activity here, and let's look at those results and see where we're at in the seed. We had an empty sandbox, an empty dev sandbox. We're going through and pushing some data in there, and actually it looks like we're getting some issues coming through. I set this up in such a way that I wanted to talk a little bit about error handling. This is the end of the demo here. We can actually go take a look right now in this SF Ben sandbox. I'm looking at the account related list. There was nothing before. When I refresh this, here's my expected data. My accounts are coming in. I had some filters in here. There may have been some errors coming through. We can take a look at those errors and see, okay, what happened here at my contact? Well, looks like we had some issues here at my account level. 2 failed records out of 100. Well, what happened to those 2 failed records? Here's how we give you visibility into errors that might have happened in the process here. I'm a very transparent SE. I like to talk about things that may have not gone exactly correct, because it's also important to talk about how easy it is to see what went wrong here. So my destination record URL, we couldn't make those records for you. Well, what happened in here? We take a look and dig into the final details, record by record level. What went on, what might have gone wrong, what didn't go wrong. Looks like we have an invalid email address on some of these fields right here. We can actually go take a look. We seeded this from production. What happened in here? What's wrong with this specific record? When I go look at the details on this account, oh, well, I've got an invalid email address because I'm missing a billing email address here. I can't do that because I don't have a valid billing email address. I update those records in here, put an email address in where it belongs, and I could rerun that deployment and finish that. Or in the case of a sandbox seed right now, you may not need those 2 specific records that failed. So a little bit how we push data down, how we promote data, how we regression test Salesforce CPQ, how we handle errors. You're never limited to the number of connections you could have. You could have 20 sandboxes. Doesn't even have to be your own sandbox. I'm going to take one last look at something right here. These 2 other connections, these are orgs I've connected to, environments where I can send data to or get data from. This one, the 285, these 2 records right here, they're not even sandboxes related to this production org. They're sandboxes related to maybe another org that your company has control of. Maybe you're an old multi-environment organization. Maybe you have, for our developers out there, Scratch orgs. We have a command line interface where you can do the same kind of work in here as well. Maybe you've got other sandboxes, other developer edition orgs, other Scratch orgs. We can connect to anything you can connect to in the Salesforce ecosystem. That's a very quick, but a pretty fair run through of promoting data, seeding sandboxes, and looking at our test mechanisms as well. I'm going to flip back over and just talk about and kind of wrap this up right here. So if you're interested more about what Prodly does, prodly.co/getdemo. We'll talk to you. You see the screen there, 5-star rated on the AppExchange and G2. Here's some of our AppExchange reviews right here, 5 stars. We use Prodly to move Salesforce CPQ, billing, Conga CLM to a new org. So many interconnections. There are 50+ objects in CPQ. Trying to promote and move configuration changes in CPQ by hand, that's a days, maybe weeks long project. We handle that in 30, maybe 40 minutes, depending upon how many records we've got to move. Similarly, in G2 crowd here, dependent deployments can be done in a fraction of the time. Easy to use, whatever you build in a sandbox, and it's built in Salesforce. You're in Salesforce doing your Salesforce work in here as well. So any questions? We've got a little bit of time left here. It took about 50 minutes from when we actually started today. Thank you again. Any questions, please feel free. We got the questions panel down there. It looks like there may be a question here. They may have been answered. Let me take a look at the questions just to make sure we've got these answered. Pop this out real quick. Looks like we've got a few coming through. Some dev knowledge, can't change my audio settings. Looks like just a few things here. Does this all run natively in Salesforce? Is there any server or service involved? A question from Christian out there. Thank you for asking that question. We have a service on our end that's doing the work. It requires Salesforce data. You're connecting to Salesforce organizations, org to org. You can also connect up through a repository, a kind of higher level DevOps scenario there. But there is a service involved here that's actually doing the recalculation, the gathering, the reassociation of relationships. That's where really that secret sauce comes in, where our proprietary algorithm is doing that work. DevOps Center came in. Yeah, DevOps Center is coming up here. It was unveiled at Dreamforce. It's going to be essentially their answer to their own change sets. They're going to look at the DevOps Center. We're hearing right now that data will still not be a part of that, that it's really just a better experience kind of along the long change sets. We're also looking at how we integrate with that. The idea of a work item there and new records in Salesforce. So we've got some really good ideas. We're working hand in hand with Salesforce, really wherever we can, but specifically on the DevOps Center as well. The service is running here. I'm actually not sure, Christian, if there's a non-US data center for the service right now. I'll take that away. I'll put a little note. I'm an old developer, so I'll put something in Notepad where I can actually take a look and make sure I ask that question, and we can follow up with you directly. If you would, go ahead and make sure. I think we've got your email address as well. We'll have your email address. We'll get back to you on that one, Christian. Does Prodly work with standard field updates? Yeah, we do. So we can work with field updating opportunity stages or sales processes. So we can do updates if you need to. We can do record by record updates. If you needed to update a bunch of records, we're typically a migration or deployment solution, but you can use us to avoid doing inserts, and you can actually do record matching if you want to, not just new records. You can tell us to match records and do updating as well if you need to. We can turn off those events if you don't want your flow to kick off, or you can leave it on, and when we update records, you've got those events still turned on. Aaron, thank you for that question as well. And this is definitely not a closed conversation, not a closed door here. Anything you want to come to, feel free to email us. My email address is pretty simple. The letter J, last name Manning, MANNING @prodly.co. Happy to answer anything here. You'll get a copy of this, and you can definitely reach out to any of us here, and we're happy to answer any other questions you might have. Maybe most importantly for me, thank you for the time today, getting to the top of the hour. Backup and recovery by Prodly. Christian asked that question as well. One more. If you're integrating with some of the repositories, version control, that is a process and a function of our version control integration, Christian, if you want to do backup and recovery, rollback specifically. But again, thank you to everybody who hung out with us. We had about 100 people on here, and I really appreciate the time today. Thank you to Christine, thank you to Joe for putting this together. And if there's any questions, don't hesitate in reaching out to us. It is really appreciated. It is my pleasure to be in front of the group here, and hopefully we learned a couple things. If there's any other questions, like I said, reach out to us.